Hey, and welcome to the Forties Formula, your go-to place for insightful discussions on navigating the 40s and thriving in this transformative decade.
We're your hosts, Jasmin and Amanda, two women that are passionate about exploring the challenges and adventures that come with turning 40 and what lies ahead.
Our guest today, Dr. Tash Mirando, is a British-trained family doctor with experience in both the UK and here in Singapore. She's a member of both the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine and the British Menopause Society, and she's developed a well-deserved reputation as the go-to doctor for women navigating the challenges and changes of menopause. Menopause is a transformative phase for many women and is a topic that isn't often discussed openly. So whether you're approaching this stage, in the midst of it, or simply curious about what it entails, we invite you to listen to this conversation with Dr. Tash Mirando. Menopause. Now, I was trying to think of an analogy as to how I can describe it because I started going through it when I was 36 years old. And the one thing that popped to mind was that ride in Universal Studios, the Jurassic Park one. You know, you're on there and it's going around quite smoothly and everything's fine. And you think, you know what, I've got the hang of life. I know exactly what I'm doing. But you know something's coming. You don't know when it's going to come and you don't know how bad it's going to be. And I feel like that's what menopause is like. What would you say?
I couldn't agree more. I think this is one of the, I won't even say issues, but one of the things we sort of have to really battle is each person's different and each woman's experience is different. Most will be fine, mild to moderate symptoms, if at all. There'll be some who just go through it, breeze through it, don't even realize they've been through the menopause until one day they go, oh, I haven't had a period in 12 months. Oh, I guess I've been through it. And for those patients, I usually say, let's not talk too much about that. Or maybe we say, right, what have you done right in order to? It's not just about your genes. But you're right, it's very individualized. And this is why it's so important to talk about it. And for women, for people in general to know more so that we can deal with it and look at best ways of managing. Quality of life is what I go for. And that's the main aim with managing perimenopause and menopause.
I remember I was watching TV. I was 36 years old. The twins were babies. And I felt like this hot wave just come over me. And I was like, Jesus, what is going on? I remember putting on the aircon and then probably within about 30 seconds, I was cold. I was like, oh, that was weird. I felt like I was having a hot flush. And I joked to my husband, I think I'm going through menopause. And then it was like, oh, shit. So I booked a doctor's appointment and lo and behold, I was. So obviously I experienced the hot flushes and I also got the night sweats. What other symptoms do women tend to get or can get during the perimenopausal phase?
It's such a vast list. I mean, we're probably at over 70 plus symptoms now. So it's very hard to, I know. And it can be, it can be as subtle as, oh, I've got some joint pain or my hearing's changing or I've got some tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. Generally speaking, what we tend to do is broadly categorize. So if we say physical symptoms, so these are your vasomotor symptoms, so the hot flushes, night sweats, things like palpitations, your joint pains, headaches, breast tenderness. Also, estrogen plays an important role with your hair, your nail, and your skin. So just subtle changes there. Sleep issues, and unfortunately weight gain, and in all the wrong places. Looking at it from a cognition point of view, so this is your brain health, brain fog, forgetfulness, inability to focus or concentrate. Imagine working, you're managing life, a family, trying to tackle all of that. You're looking at, short-term memory recall, which can get affected as well. Your mood changes, anxiety, impatience, irritability. Tough dealing with day-to-day life as it is sometimes. And then when you add to that, tearfulness as well. And then something that we as women really ignore are sort of urinary, sexual and vaginal symptoms. There's a condition called genitourinary symptoms of the menopause. And that's something that really affects women. So you're looking at recurrent urinary tract infections, vaginal dryness, discharge, incontinence, not forgetting low sex drive, poor libido, which we just go, oh, you know what, it's part and parcel of life, so we're just going to deal with it. Nobody should deal with that.
Yeah, I think you get to this point, you're in your 40s, you're busy, you're a mum, you've either got teenagers who are going through puberty or you've got little kids and, they're just driving you nuts. And you're just like, I'm so busy, I just don't have the time to think about sex. But how how can they tell whether it's hormones or just their lifestyle?
Yeah. It's very difficult because we're very good as women at making excuses. So we'll always find a reason or to come up with a reason as to why we can't do something or why we feel in a certain way. I think it's specifically a very significant drop in sexual desire, sexual function, inability to have sex in a sense as well. And I think it's, again, really thinking back on things, looking at how things were versus what has changed and getting the help you need early.
Do you get clients who say it's almost like it's an overnight thing, or does it come in gradually?
It's usually a gradual process. There are some symptoms that can just hit you like a ton of bricks. So your hot flashes, your night sweats, as Jasmin, you were mentioning. But there are other symptoms which can be very subtle. So change in your memory, your ability to focus or concentrate, your sleep. You're not going to gain 15 kilos overnight. So from a weight gain point of view as well, that's something really to keep an eye on.
So I've been told that perimenopausal symptoms can last anywhere between 5 and 15 years. Now that's a scary number, a scary time frame to sort of go through. What can we do to help manage all of this?
With the perimenopause, yes, the average timeline is about 7 years, but it can be anywhere between 5 to 10, sometimes 5 to 15 years. And it's not that the symptoms are disastrous from the get-go. Can start very subtly and then build up, or it could just be very subtle and people manage. For me, the mainstay is that prevention side and what we can do about it. And I think the two of you would know more, really, in a sense, from a nutrition point of view and the lifestyle medicine side.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, that 5 to 15 years timeline, when you were listing off some of those symptoms, I was like, gosh, a lot of that sounds like pregnancy. I'm 22 weeks pregnant right now. A lot of that sound, the brain fog and sweating in general sounds familiar. But I know it's going to end, right? I know that I'm going to deliver that baby and there's the end. But I do think in a way, and tell me if you think I'm crazy, that pregnancy is almost like your first preparation for the impact of what hormones can do to your body. Of course, PMS and periods are the very first. Pregnancy, though, is that I feel this preparation of a time when hormones affect you in a way that you absolutely cannot control. And it changes your body and it changes your mind and it does all of these things to you in a way that preparation and prevention can only go so far. But that being said, I think that there needs to be better awareness of the role, and this is what I do, right, of fitness and nutrition in preventing some of these symptoms, right? We know that a higher protein intake can help prevent some of the vasomotor symptoms. We know that having more muscle mass can help you have an easier time through your perimenopausal period. How do you work with patients to encourage those lifestyle changes before you jump into different types of treatments?
Oh, I love that you mentioned my favorite word, protein.
Hey, Amanda, picture this. You're in your 40s.
I am.
You are. You're working, you're raising kids, you're heavily pregnant, and you're hungry.
Yep, that's my everyday.
But you're not going to feed yourself and your family any old crap.
No, and that's exactly why I use the Meat Club. Seriously. The Meat Club is your premier online source for top quality Australian and New Zealand produce right here in Singapore.
And if you're tired of the endless struggle of family meal planning, guess what? The Meat Club subscription service delivers high-quality meats direct to your door.
And we have a little treat for our listeners. As a new customer, you can get $12 off by using the discount code TFF12. And there's no minimum spend. Discounts are only valid through the website, themeatclub.com.sg.
For more updates, recipes, and special offers, don't forget to follow The Meat Club on Instagram at The Meat Club SG. That's The Meat, MEATCLUB SG. Now back to the show.
I don't know.
Protein in this room.
Is it? Excellent. You made a very good point there about pregnancy, but not forgetting menarche, which is when you first start your period. So these are the main stages. We're in a way good at talking about, when your period first starts, here's what you look out for. It's also the teenage hormones going up and down. Pregnancy. Roughly, here's what you can expect. Here's a lot of support. But then what? It just stops there. So this has been the issue, is we have those two big stages in life and then everyone forgets about what comes after. And especially with pregnancy. And as women, we're getting pregnant later on in life. So that surge, in hormones sometimes can almost trigger things off. So it's looking at that surge in hormones, then it suddenly drops post-pregnancy. And then depending, are you breastfeeding, all of that, it plays a huge role. From a lifestyle point of view, it's never too late to start. So it's something that I'm a firm believer in. I'm doing a lot of extra work for it as well. And it's really looking at the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. So for me, sleep is number one. Because if we're not sleeping, so quality, quantity, and consistency, that's automatically going to make us feel more tired the next day. We're going to consume more calories. We're not going to want to exercise, etc. It's this vicious cycle. Nutrition, looking at things. So also with hormonal surges, it's looking at how nutritionally can we improve our phytoestrogens, our progesterones, our testosterones. A lot of it is protein-based. So your soys, your edamames, your lean meats, your fish, looking at flax seeds, a little bit of dark chocolate, not a bad thing.
I'm all about that intervention.
All about the chocolate, definitely.
But also the exercise. It's not about going for runs and doing massive HIIT workouts. You need to lift weights.
Girl, preach it. Say it again.
Yeah. You have to lift weights and safely. It's not about suddenly showing up at a gym and trying to deadlift 80 kilos or 100 kilos. Gradually build it up because, again, with the more muscle mass you have, increases your basal metabolic rate. That, unfortunately, the fact that, things can slow down a little bit as we get older with the hormones going up and down, all of this can just help to counteract that and give us the best chance to have as good a quality of life as possible.
Yeah. I recently wrote a blog and it's called Why HIIT is Shit for women over 40. For women over 40. I don't think there's that big of a role for that style of workout, but somehow that's the more popular workout these days. And I'm confused as to how, those two messages have gotten so crossed.
Yeah. I think it's there for the right person at the right time and it's doing it correctly based. All of this is very individualized, but getting that zone 2 training in, getting your walks in, getting your bike time in, cross-trainer, and really looking at, and I'm not saying everyone needs to be paying to get a personal trainer or join a fancy gym. There are lots of resources online, go on YouTube, lots of exercise programs. Just start with bodyweight exercises at home, 5-10 minutes, and then build it up. And as you start to enjoy it more and you start to see the benefits, automatically that behavior change comes in and you want to do more and more, which means then you're going to look at your nutrition even more. You're going to sleep better. Your mental health's going to be better. You're going to want to do things socially. I mean, Singapore has lots of places to walk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We are in a walking city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spoiled for choice.
And also, if you smoke, stop smoking. If you drink, look at how much you're drinking. Cut back. Today's World Temperance Day, which is basically about moderation and looking at cutting back and stopping alcohol. So I just thought I'd mention it since it's the 3rd of October.
Amanda's already there, aren't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, here's my halo. I've stopped alcohol entirely for 22 weeks.
I actually feel like I have cut back loads. And I don't know if it has coincided with the whole perimenopausal thing. But for me, I know how alcohol affects my sleep. Mm-hmm. And like you, sleep is number one for me. And I know that, if I have more than one drink, I'm not sleeping. So I'd rather just not have a poor night's sleep. Plus, then I've got to deal with the kids as well. So it's kind of balancing everything out.
Yeah. And I think it's important to make, so for example, you said that alcohol interferes with your sleep. I know that alcohol interferes with my muscle protein synthesis. So that's something for me that's non-negotiable, right? It's like I know that if I'm in a phase where I'm trying to be anabolic, there's no way that alcohol is going to have a role in that. And I think that sometimes the symptoms of perimenopause are confused with the symptoms of lifestyle choices. And how do you help women kind of parse that out?
I think this is where the conversation piece, and it's finding somebody who actually is there to listen and look at things holistically. It's not about a symptom-based approach and going, oh, you have this symptom, we'll do this test, we'll fix it. No, it's looking at that sort of overall holistic viewpoint. And a lot of the times, I spend most of my time just sat listening. And just letting people talk, because the more information you get, the more you get to know your patient, you get to know the person, you actually go, hold on, now this makes sense. Have you thought about it? So it's then bringing that into light and looking at the behavior changes that can be made. And it's not easy. This is not about fixing everything overnight. These things take time. Somebody's been overweight or obese, it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You're not going to, I don't want anyone to lose that over 3 months, because it's going to come back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
It's doing it in a sustainable way where you look at things in the long term, so that once you get to where you need to get to, you are in the best place possible to deal with any stress that comes your way. And this, again, comes into play with the perimenopause, menopause, and also as women getting older, risk of heart disease, chronic conditions, bone health, all of that.
So when I went to see the doctor, HRT was mentioned to me. And my immediate thought was, cancer risk.
Yeah.
Is there a risk? Is there a link between the two? What would you say to your patients?
That is a very good question, and that is what is always making the news, and that's what's been in the studies, and this is one of the reasons sort of in the early 2000s with the Women's Health Initiative, where sort of the data was represented in a certain way, and then it just spiraled from there. Since then, a lot of extra data. Most women, 90% of the female population, have a low lifetime risk of breast cancer. Okay, so that I want to start with that. HRT and estrogen alone is not associated with increasing breast cancer and may even lower it. Now, this is for women who have had a hysterectomy, for example, so you don't need that progesterone component to protect the lining of the womb. Also, we've got much newer hormone therapy, so the body-identical treatments, so our gels, patches, Utrogestin, which is a micronized progesterone, there's no increased risk of breast cancer for the first 5 years of taking it. Also under the age of 60. If I put it into context, the risk is so low that it's actually, the risk is lower than if you're overweight or drinking a couple of glasses of wine each night or being sedentary, meaning doing no exercise. So that is just putting it into context. So it's always worth a conversation, but it's not about going, oh gosh, I could never go on it because I don't want to get breast cancer.
And I think that's how people tend to look at it, don't they? They've just heard something. And I think it was a flawed study.
Not even flawed. It was just the study was done for a particular reason, and it was also done in older women. Once upon a time, hormone therapy was used more from a prevention point of view, so preventing heart disease, preventing bone health. And it was also much older synthetic hormone therapies. Technology is past, pharmaceuticals have improved. And what we have now is way superior and in a sense, safer, more natural as well. So we have to take all of this into context. And it's very individualized. I have, and I have some women who come and say, listen, I'm pretty sure I'll go through the perimenopause soon. I'd like to go on HRT because I don't want to get X, Y, Z. That's not what it's there for. So it needs to be used correctly.
Yeah. And that's something, at the Lift Clinic, what we always say is know your numbers. And this refers to know your, we do exercise testing, know your VO2 max and your resting metabolic rate. This applies to your iron, right? Know your ferritin level. And this applies to your hormone profile. I always say, if you are a woman that is 40 and over, get a baseline. Get your hormones tested, see where your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are falling. That way, in the future, if and when you're experiencing symptoms, you have a baseline against which you can test. And then you can have a sense of what you might need in terms of BHRT or HRT or estrogen replacement. Then you have an idea. But if you have no idea what your numbers were to begin with, then you're really just kind of shooting in the dark for where you have progressed.
So this is a bit of a grey area with testing. Generally speaking, the consensus is there are only specific instances to test hormones. If someone's having symptoms under the age of 40 or in their early 40s, now less than sort of 1 in 100 women will have symptoms under the age of 40, 1 in 1,000 under the age of 30. So, these are, yes, they sound like biggish numbers, but they're not. So it's always taking that into consideration. If you're in your, depending on where you are, so mid-40s, late 40s, you're symptomatic, it's a clinical diagnosis. We don't need to do hormone testing at that point. Another time we do hormone testing is actually if somebody has the Mirena coil in as part of, yes, contraception once upon a time, but also as part of protecting the lining of the womb if they're on hormone therapy. and to help reduce that sort of up and down in your periods, your heavier periods. Then before we remove it, sort of 55, 56, we do a blood test just to make sure you've been through the menopause. And then again, it's a choice. We do therapeutic trials on HRT, on hormone therapy. We can do therapeutic trials off hormone therapy. You're on it one day, you come off it the next day, the hormone's out of your body. So this is not a magic medicine. This is just giving back what the body needs.
I love that.
So full disclosure, I am on BHRT. So I take estrogen, progesterone, micronized progesterone, the eugesterone that you mentioned, and testosterone. Yep. And I've noticed that any time I feel my symptoms coming back, and it's usually the sleep, that's the one that I can tell straight away whether something is not right. I will have to sort of go and figure out how to tweak it. I'll speak to my doctor and I'll say, look, this is coming back. I don't feel great. And I can just feel it in my body. And I think straight away, you kind of know. I think I've gotten to the point where I'm very, what's the word? I'm very self-aware.
Yeah.
Very self-aware. So, straight away, the night is the one that gives it away the most.
And that's very, very common because at one point in your life, you may need a certain amount of hormone therapy. And then that could change. So this is why it's not about starting somebody on something and then saying, okay, go away and just carry on. I would do an initial follow-up in a month, then 3 months until we've got the person in a nice steady state. After that, every 6 months. And this is why actually being on something like hormone therapy, if somebody needs it, you're actually monitored much closer. The screening is up to date, so your breast screening, cervical screening, if you need a pelvic scan, for example, your examinations. So if we're going to pick something up, we're going to pick it up much earlier than somebody who is not having this level of monitoring and screening.
Yeah. And I think that's really different in what you're doing, Dr. Tash, is that you're actually spending time with your patients and you're monitoring them on several markers, not just one. And you're also looking at what is optimal versus what is normal. And I think functional medicine allows you a different paradigm than traditional medicine in that you can get deeper with your patients. And you mentioned the word holistic. I think that is so far describing your approach beautifully.
And this is, for us as a clinic, this is what we do. It's not just about, and I think the privilege we have is time. I still do my NHS work. Do I have time? No, I don't. And it's very unfortunate because I would love to do more for 40 patients, 50 patients a day. But I'd be there constantly.
Not gonna happen. Yeah, I mean, that's,
Whereas having that privilege of time and being able to listen and have that conversation and be able to really look at things holistically, looking at the lifestyle measures. So, medicine 3.0, we're going for the prevention rather than waiting for something to happen and then trying to fix it.
So I understand that as you age or after menopause, so post-menopause, your risk factors for certain conditions increase. Can you tell us what these risks are and how we can minimize the risks?
Lifestyle medicine. It's really looking at that prevention piece. So looking at your nutrition, your sleep, your exercise, your mental health and well-being. These are things that we can do sometimes more easily than other times, but we have to take that responsibility, and that's on us. From a risk profile point of view, two of the main things are heart disease plus strokes and osteoporosis, which is where the bones start to thin, which is osteopenia, and then to start to break down. So both of these factors, looking at your exercise, your nutrition, your sleep, you could automatically reduce it. For women after the menopause, the risk of heart disease is higher than men if they haven't had any heart disease by the age of 50. Other things to look at is urinary symptoms, so recurrent infections, incontinence, especially after childbirth as well. Sexual dysfunction. Just because somebody goes through the menopause doesn't mean you stop having sex. Weight gain. So this is where, looking at sleep, generally speaking for an adult, and you may laugh at this, but the average should be 8.5 hours of sleep every night.
Oh, I
Who
wish.
gets, exactly.
I got 8 hours last night.
There you go.
Actually,
She
7
was
hours
ready.
and 59 minutes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned osteopenia and osteoporosis, and I think that's something that by this point in 2023, most women are aware of. But in Asia specifically, we have this other issue of sarcopenia and muscle loss. And I don't know that women yet are connecting how important their muscle loss is to their bone loss, meaning if they had more, a higher ALMI, a higher skeletal muscle index versus, just looking at bone density every time, how those two interact. How do you educate your patients about this issue, and how do you encourage more women to think about their muscle mass in addition to their bone mass?
I think this is something where everyone's striving for this perfect BMI. Am I the biggest fan of BMI? No, because it doesn't take into account quite a few things. It's about being healthy. So really looking at your in-body scan, looking at the breakdown of things. So you're looking at your bone mass, your muscle mass. With women, so we do after the age of 50, we say it's recommended to get a bone density scan done. And that's important to look at a baseline. Carrying a little bit more weight within the right range will help with your bone mass. And this is where that strength training and your protein plays a big part. So it's having that conversation and almost educating women to say, it's not this or that. You put it together, it's two for the price of one.
Yeah.
You're building your muscle mass, you're reducing your chance of sarcopenia. Which is loss of muscle mass. And muscle mass can go like this. You fracture your wrist, you fracture your lower limb, you'll notice your calf just go down like this. You'll notice your forearm and your muscles just drop. So that's why it's important to be consistent with that. So it's that education piece once again.
Yeah. And as an aging athlete, right, my concern has shifted so far away from performance and so far into injury prevention. Because exactly what you said, I cannot suffer a lower limb injury because I cannot afford that muscle loss at this age.
Yeah. And also from, whether you were an athlete at a high level or you're still competing, you're doing things socially, it's about that injury prevention. And that's one of the reasons for me is I play a lot of tennis and I want to be able to be on that court for however long I need to be on and put that work in the gym with the nutrition, etc., to make sure that it helps from a quality of life point of view.
You mentioned risk of cardiovascular risk and stroke. My grandmother actually had a stroke when I think she must have been over 50, definitely under 60. And I wonder, had she had been given some form of HRT, whether that may have helped prevent that. And it's crazy because I feel like, there was a whole generation of women who were sort of not given the opportunity to, I guess, manage symptoms, manage other risks in their life.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. It's tough because these are things that can be severely debilitating. And also at that time, it's the conversation piece around not just medication, but what can you do to rebuild yourself, which unfortunately even now is a struggle. Trying to get the older generation to do the work that needs to be done to make sure that sarcopenia doesn't play a role is huge. Now, tough question because, again, hormone therapy is there not to prevent heart disease, but it's for the symptomatic management. Yes, it does help to reduce the risk of heart disease, again, with osteoporosis as well, because it's the estrogen component. So we need estrogen for our bones, for our muscles, our ligaments. In the heart, what is a heart? It's a muscle. What are the blood vessels? So again, yes, there is a role to play. It's very hard to look back in retrospect. But again, it's looking at your grandmother as an individual and looking at, okay, what happened at that time and what may have helped her. But here's the situation now and how can we move forward with it? And this is where that sort of lifestyle piece plays a huge role.
What can husbands and partners do to help support their wives during this period? Because obviously we can become psycho bitches, right? So much shit going on. And some men may not understand what is happening, obviously, psychologically, emotionally. How can they support their wives during this crazy period in our life?
I think this is where the conversation piece comes in, starting conversations early. And also, as you know, with families, if you have sons, daughters, it's starting that early because it's looking at it from a period point of view, going through those teenage years. most mums going through perimenopause are likely to have teenagers at home. So can you imagine the hormones surging in that household?
I mean, to be fair, I had newborn babies. So I was just like, I don't know what's worse. Right? Newborn twins as well. And a toddler.
Yeah. So for me, that conversation piece, and sometimes it's hard as a couple to start that conversation. So, use a healthcare provider, use online resources. There are videos done by husbands about how they helped manage sort of symptoms with their wives. Also for partners and in the workplace, to know and understand people working with them, for them, above them, when you start to notice changes, to be able to offer that support. It's not always easy because there's a lot of compromise. But again, it's looking at, how can we work together? Can we look at our sleep together? So let's make sure, we're both sleeping at the same time, waking up at the same time, because even a slight shift in that, if someone's sleeping a bit earlier, waking up a bit earlier, a little bit of light that comes on, it advances your, sort of circadian rhythm and changes things. So that's a good piece. Looking at exercising together and looking at nutrition together at home. Because if you do it as a family, you're also teaching your young children, your teenagers, how to eat better so that as they grow up, this is the norm. Yeah. So it's not, you've already learned what the norm is. So as you grow up, you know exactly what to do. Yes, there'll be times you go have your kebab after a night out.
Still has protein.
Thank you.
That's our favorite word.
Get a bit of salad in there, But all I'm saying is it's about making good things the normal so that you're not having to make that effort. So exercising shouldn't be an effort. Go for a cycle together as a family. Go for a walk together as a family. Do a Joe Wicks online program as a family. But it's just making things as normal as possible. And doing it together makes a big difference.
It's funny you say that, to do it as a family, because my boys know now that I always prioritize their protein. Yeah. And they'll say to me, Mummy, I'm full, but if I eat all my protein, can I finish? Can I be done? I'm like, yes, okay, fine.
Technically, yes. You can.
So one of the things that I realized is that when you are going through all of this, sometimes, and other people are not going through it at the same time you are, how can you better sort of find the support that you need? Because people don't talk about it. And I think whenever I used to say, I'm going through menopause, I'd be like, they'd get the response, what, already? Really? And I'm like, well, yeah, it can happen at any time.
And that's actually a common misconception that menopause happens when you're older. And this is why a lot of people will not think about it or talk about it, because the assumption is, I'm fine, I'm not old enough. But as I mentioned earlier, less than 1 in 100 under the age of 40, less than 1 in 1,000 under the age of 30. And this is where I have to say and this is the beauty of where social media has played a big part over the last year to 18 months, is getting that message out, getting people talking about it. It's actually to a certain extent a bit of a problem in the UK because we can't cope with the demand. And that is because from a time point of view, you don't have the luxury of time. But I think with access to pharmacies, with access to pharmacists who can have that conversation, so using that multidisciplinary team, nurse practitioners, general practitioners, specialists in hospital, we have to work as a team. And I think for women, just keep talking. If your own friends shut you down, you keep talking. If you see a healthcare provider who shuts you down, you keep going, you find the person who will listen. And that can take time.
Yeah, I think the keep talking part is so important and so different from our parents' generation. You mentioned that your grandmother had a stroke and maybe, if HRT could have helped her. I think about my own mother, she went through postpartum depression and was told, not real, not a thing, you don't need anything. She went through a very long, almost decade-long menopause and was told again the same. You just white knuckle it. You don't need anything. This is normal. And I think, had she just been born a little bit later, and been in my generation with access to information and professionals that are reassuring her, it's definitely one thing to talk about it with a friend. but it's something to be told by your healthcare professional. You are not crazy. This, and this are things you can try. Here's some actionable tools I can put in your hands. And my mom never had that. And I think that the talk is the first step, and health professionals that are supportive and willing to give actionable tools is that second step.
Thank you. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm even, here. I do all these talks. We, as a practice, will do all these education pieces, is because we want people to be empowered. We want them to have the right information. And also, it's about looking at other causes to things. Yes, a lot of the times it's a perimenopause, menopause, but we rule other things out. We need to make sure that, is there something else going on? Could this be your thyroid? Could you be diabetic? Could it be your kidneys, your liver? So we look at all of that and also look at the screening side of things. So this is where health screening plays a big part. And actually Singapore is very good with health screening. Yeah, it's just making sure you get the explanation rather than just going to get the test done.
So would you say then that if you feel any different in your normal self, whether you are feeling a little bit more anxious or, you are getting that little bit of joint pain, you should go and see somebody and then question further, why is this happening now? And could it be perimenopause?
Absolutely. It's always worth the conversation. It's not going and saying, I am going through the perimenopause. Yeah. Yeah, you could be, but it's also looking at your symptoms overall and saying, actually, could it also be XYZ? We need to rule out those organic causes. And it's a really good time then to just get a health screen done. Just make sure you're on top of things. Make sure your breast screening is up to date, your cervical screening, all of that, to chat about other things. And also look at the preventative side of things and starting at any point. It's never too late. You're 70 or 80. Get going. Start, lifting a bag of peas.
That's right. Fill up your water bottle.
Fill up your water bottle. Go for a walk. Yeah. See how, even if it's up and down in your living room, time it. Can you do it faster?
Ooh, you're speaking to the athlete in me, girl.
There you go.
It's it's funny what you just said about that. My parents are visiting. They're 74, and I was reading one of my favorite weekly newsletters from Arnold Schwarzenegger, health guru, and life advisor to me personally. And he was talking about the sit to stand test.
It is.
And I thought, you know what? My parents are over 65. Let's hit up the sit to stand test. And they loved it. They took it on like it was me taking on high rocks this weekend. They were like, let's do this. And then when I didn't tell them the norms to begin with, so they hit their number, and then I was like, well, this is the average, and they're like, oh, let me do it again. I guess the message there, right, is don't underestimate older people for having the vim and vigor to take on physical challenges and to make lifestyle changes.
Absolutely.
Don't assume that they're just heading out to pasture. They want to be vibrant and in control of their health as much as we do.
Couldn't agree more. This is looking at it from not a lifespan point of view, which is how long you live, but your health span. Your quality of life, that marginal decade, which is your last 10 years of life, you need to be living it to the full. But you start early. But again, it's never too late. It's always looking at that quality of life.
When I found out that I was going through perimenopause, I think it was a couple of nights later, I had a dream. And in that dream, I felt like I'd fast forwarded my life by 10 years, which I kind of probably felt like it had happened. And I was trying to work out, did I do this? I used to be a serial yo-yo dieter, always trying out different things. I've had different hormonal issues. And so I'm looking back and thinking, did I do this to myself? Was this my fault? And then after that point, I thought to myself, right, it doesn't matter now where I've got to. I'm now going to make a change. And it was almost like a switch in my head. A mindset shift. And I thought, from this point onwards, it's not going to be about how I look or how much weight I gain. It's going to be about making sure that I'm strong and I'm healthy, especially for my boys, because like I said, they were babies at the time. And I wanted to be able to be there for them and do things. I didn't want to be that mum who, couldn't keep up with the boys. And so I felt like for me, that was the driving force on making a change in my lifestyle.
Yeah. And you need that where it needs to come from you. As a healthcare professional, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, till you're blue in the face, here's what you need to do. But until that behavior change, that switch flips, it has to come from the person. Yeah. And then that's where that constant conversation, we keep addressing it. And there'll be something where, in your case, it was the boys. And it's not just about being able to be there for them. It's also looking at, as you get older, from a travel point of view, from a quality of life point of view, grandchildren, you want to be able to pick up your grandchildren. You want to be able to, when you're on a flight or on a bus, anything, to be able to pick up your own little hand carry-on and put it up instead of somebody else doing that for you. If you have a fall at home, you want to be able to get up with your one hand rather than being on the floor for 3 days until somebody finds you. So, it's about day-to-day practical things and how you can start early to reduce the risks for you as you get older.
And I think that, again, is a way, one of the recurrent themes that we've been talking about here is like women needing to take charge of their own health and women needing to own their own identities. And I think that exactly that, by encouraging them to make these better lifestyle choices as an act of empowerment and an act of self-reliance, for your eventual future, I think that is a complete reframing from what our parents were told.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's that reframing and also what we have access to now compared to once upon a time. The amount of data we have. I love data, love research, because that's what we base our advice on. And yes, sometimes we don't always get it right. And then we say, listen, we're sorry, we didn't get it right, but here's the new data. Here's how we move forward. But that's the whole point. And it's that constant learning experience as well.
Thank you, Dr. Tash. It has been absolutely wonderful. But before we finish off, we do have one more question to ask you. And we want to know, what is your prescribed Forties formula? What piece of advice or wisdom would you like to share with our listeners about navigating this next phase of their life?
I think this is such a brilliant question and a great way to end a fantastic conversation, really, a chat. You're going to hear the same things from me. Prioritize your sleep, protein up, lift some weights, and manage your stress early. In your 40s, you're likely to be juggling a lot, career, family, the good and not so good stress that comes with it. So be a little bit selfish. Prioritize self-care and emotional well-being so that you can thrive.
Love that.
Incredible. Take that one to the bank.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tash.
My
it was
pleasure.
amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
This is Paul, our editor.
He's a 25-year-old unmarried Singaporean guy listening to the ramblings of 12 older women on everything from menopause to weightlifting to sex.
Paul, what's your thoughts on today's conversation?
Hey, hello there again. So for me, I'll be honest, this isn't exactly my area of interest or expertise as well. I mean, let's be real. I'm a guy in my 20s and menopause is just not something that I'll ever go through, I guess. But, well, for me, I guess I do have a partner, and it is interesting to better understand what menopause is, from the perspective at least, like, when she gets to that stage in life further down the road. So, great topic. All right, catch you guys soon. See y'all.
Hey guys, did you know that you can leave us questions and comments on FanList?
That's right. On fanlist.com/the40s formula, you can leave us a voice note where you can ask us anything, leave us your feedback, or just say hi. And now, a word from listener Balwant09. Wow, episode 1 was so empowering. I fucking love it.
Balwant, we fucking love you too. Thank you.
Before we go, please remember to hit subscribe and take a moment to support the 40s formula by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform.
Your reviews will help us to reach more people and allow us to continue to bring valuable content. It should only take a moment, and it's a free way for you to support the show.
You can also stay updated with the 40s formula by following us on Instagram at the 40s formula, all one word. We share behind-the-scenes insights, episode updates, and much more, so please be sure to hit that follow button.
We appreciate your time and support. Thank you for being part of this community, and we'll be back next week for more empowering conversations with inspiring guests.
Bye.
Bye.
It's being confident enough to say, yes, I'll come for brunch, but no, I'm not having that bruisey brunch.
Yeah.
I'm still there. I'm still, I don't need to be drunk to have a conversation
Yeah.
with you. I'll probably remember a lot more if I wasn't.
Episode because we were just saying, like, this first season, right, is all about just establishing experts in these areas of relevance to the 40s, right? And then we can get into like little things. I thought we could do a whole episode on alcohol.
I think so.
A whole episode on how women in their 40s are using alcohol and being honest. Like, you're using it as a crutch to get through what is a difficult time, and we've established all the reasons why. And
you touched upon that in your talk as well, didn't you? I do remember you talking about, like just having that glass of wine because you just want to, but it's not actually helping.
No,
it's just putting a plaster over.
It's all, and this is what the more plasters you get, what
Yeah.
happens? It just stops. So you're not getting to the root cause of things.
Yeah.